Exactly.
It feels more official now that's being
Yes.
recorded.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and for
Well,
those
yeah.
who don't want to be recorded, that's okay, but feel free to, yeah, introduce yourselves in the chat.
Yeah, maybe more folks will pop in as we start.
Right.
Well, it's great
But
that you have this archive so we can take a look at it later.
Yeah.
speaking of which,
Then we'll see how we stumble over our words.
Oh.
You're a teacher, though. You're very good at this talking thing.
Normally I have a live audience, so this brings me back
Yeah.
to COVID.
Mine is morning. Mornings are great because that's when farmers market is.
This is going to trigger my
Evenings not so
PTSD
much.
from COVID.
Really? Oh my
man,
goodness.
that's rough.
Yeah, I was on
okay.
what board? I don't remember which. We were trying to do our meetings via Zoom.
Yeah.
And we have horrible internet out there, so that was not fun.
I started arranging IEPs to come here to the farm, and the families would all come in, and then there'd be like 2 or 3 teachers off to the side, and everybody else would be here. It was so much
And
better.
they're like, whatever. Yeah, I think it was TCA meetings because the elders
Sure.
wanted to keep
Yeah.
everybody safe.
Understandable.
Yep, exactly. We were very happy
All
to
right,
come back.
Barrett, Lisa, you guys ready? Shall we
Yep.
jump
Ready.
into it?
All right, we're going to get professional.
Great. Well, yeah, for those popping in, this is going to be a webinar about wildfire resilience and mitigation methods for farmers and ranchers. Let me get this presentation up. One moment.
My allergies are crazy.
Okay. Can everybody see that all right?
Looks good. Mission Control
Awesome.
approves.
Mission Control approves. Wonderful. Cool. So this project was made possible by a grant from the California Fire Foundation, which provided the funds for CAF to give back then out to farmers in Placer County who are agreed to come and join us here for today. So a little bit about the California Fire Foundation. It was formed in 1987. It's a statewide nonprofit that provides public safety prevention, education initiatives, emotional and financial assistance to families of fallen firefighters and the communities they protect. California Fire Foundation's mandate includes an array of programs that honor fallen firefighters and provide survivor and victim assistance, as well as public safety education initiatives aimed at preventing injuries and death from preventable safety hazards. So yeah, Fire Foundation branching out a bit with some preventative work here. So we've all kind of already been getting to know each other, which is great. But yeah, typical Zoom etiquette applies. We'll have some time for questions throughout the webinar. Amber and I are gonna talk a little bit about CAF, and then Barrett and Lisa will each have a chance to talk about their projects, and then we can all talk together if we'd like. And we have a poll ready. We might be able to just like chime in if the people visiting here in attendance would like to put in the chat whether we have experience with wildfire. Go ahead and write in anything that maybe you've had experience with. Oh yeah, here we go.
And yeah, Josh, if you want, you go ahead and enter the full screen slideshow mode if you want, because I think we're still seeing your smaller version.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah. And I don't think that... Let us know, Barrett, if you can see that poll and participate. Cool, great. I know you're you're 2 people on one screen, so maybe you only get to choose your top one between the 2 of you, but okay. And yeah. I'm gonna call Cole and Layla out for sure, just because we know y'all. But yeah, take your time, just kind of whichever one is sort of top of mind for you out of these. 5 options. We like to ask this across the different types of webinars that we've hosted for the wildfire program, to kind of get a lay of the land, who's attending, who's dealing with what types of impacts and responses the most. So, okay, cool. I think we're at critical mass, and I think we can share the results on the screen. Awesome. Thanks for introducing yourself there, Layla. Great to have you. New position at CAF. Love having you on board, taking over.
All right.
Okay, cool. Hopefully everybody saw that. So interesting, mostly, yeah, some direct experience and some folks that are obviously impacted by the fallout of a lot of smoke and prolonged poor air quality.
Yeah, those impacts reach far. Well, for those who aren't part of CAF, Community Alliance of Family Farmers, just a bit of information about what our organization does. We have 4 different teams, a policy team that does advocacy both state and at the national level, for advocating for small and family scale farms, and a farm to market team that's working on, hold on. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think you can use your back arrows sometimes too on the keyboard. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Don't like you. There you go.
No, I found it now. Thanks. The farm to market team sets up food hubs and works on various areas of procurement for farmers. Some of our staff do a farm to school program, providing schools with channels to affordable organic foods. An ecological farming team, which I believe Layla is a part of, that is has their hands in all sorts of different things, from healthy soils grant program, technical assistance, to research projects, and also lots of educational field days, teaching about composting and integrated pest management and more. And our farmer services team, that's where Amber and I are, which has pretty various roles, from, as you and Barrett and Lisa, you just learned, a tech hub, a small farm tech hub, also a specialist in organic certification and emergency funding, and the Wildfire Resilience program. I am a Grizzly Corps fellow at CAF. That's me down there. Grizzly Corps is a program organized through UC Berkeley that works on workforce development and capacity building for organizations that focus on climate resilience. And the fellows are matched with organizations across the state, of which there are 34 this year. Okay, and then Amber is gonna talk a little bit about the past few years of the Wildfire Resilience program.
Yeah, and I'll just say this wouldn't have been possible without Grizzly Corps, because Josh is my local spy on Barrett and Lisa's projects, because I'm up here in Oregon now. But yeah, my name is Amber. I worked with CAF for 2 years as a wildfire resilience specialist, and now I'm contracting for a bit longer. But it's been my pleasure to officially launch the program with help from seed funding through Red Cross in 2021. And a lot of the impetus for that came from some of the big fires, like the Tubbs fire in Sonoma County, and some of the resulting new things that we were just sort of learning about at the time, where those folks that were impacted were able to mobilize, but needed more resources, more capacity to respond and recover. And so after a couple of years of hearing from that through our policy listening sessions through the policy team, CAF decided, okay, we got to lean into that space. And so that's where that seed funding came from, and my position was created. And so we basically put a lot of effort into 3 main buckets with the program, with prevention, response, and recovery, the bulk of which is prevention, right? We all know that a dollar of your recovery funding is usually less if you put it in prevention first. So in terms of just trying to be efficient, that's where we really work to survey what's happening in the farming community with regards to wildfire, get those stories out to other folks so hopefully they can learn different methods of both recovery but also preparation and mitigation. So there's no excuse because all that information is available in podcasts and video and blogs and printed format, and so we have it all, whatever your learning style is. But response is another place where we try to learn what different groups are. For example, in Sonoma County, there's a great project that only looks at how do you move large livestock, like how do you, during disasters, whether that's fire or flood, et cetera. And so we try to make sure that we know who those people are and can connect farmers that need that types of service and information. And then recovery is primarily grant funding, but also a little bit of support in terms of research like soils treatment and how do we deal with food safety concerns from fire, like heavy metals or fire retardant and things like that. So we have our fingers in all the pies. And we're proud of what the program's been able to achieve. And this is one of the projects that is our first attempt to really use pass-through funding from a private foundation to get that money to farmers to do mitigation work. Because again, we know that prevention, you can give $5,000 for recovery, but if you see the pond liner behind me in my photo, that alone to remove and replace was over $70,000. So if you could spend $5,000 on trimming the line of trees behind it to help buffer those types of impacts, you might have saved yourself a lot of work. So, and headache, but removing the newts was fun. Okay. So I'm going to hand it back to Josh, but that's me. That's my involvement. But I am excited to have Josh leading this project since he's local to the area where we selected these pilot programs to take place. So I want to hear more about it.
This is just a bit more about the organization. There's different teams that work in really different areas that don't often overlap, but I thought it'd be nice for us to look at CAF's strategic plan for the next now 4 years. And I don't know if you can read these, but they're about providing food for communities, farms, supporting local economies, racial justice, public accountability, and land stewardship. And all of these dip into many of the teams at CAF in different ways. And none of us need a reminder that wildfires are an issue in California, but I thought it would be good to kind of contextualize why we're doing this work a little bit. And it's also, I think, valuable to recognize that it's not just our personal experience of smoke or direct fire danger that validates this issue, but it's plainly to be seen in lots of data that people around the world can access that this is a big problem in the state. Wildfirerisk.org is a site I came across recently, and it's got a bunch of different layers where you can look at different states in the US and their relative vulnerability to wildfire. So unsurprisingly, California is at high risk for wildfire and is also the homes in this state are at high risk of burning in those wildfires. And this isn't only a bad note. All of us are engaged in work to solve these problems, and we know that there's paths to, come to a point where we're more resilient to this disaster. So it's really a large problem, but I think what it also says is that our work isn't just in our own self-interest, but is in the interest of the entire state. And on that note, there's a lot of movement been happening in the last maybe 5 to 7 years around wildfire prevention work and resilience, both like on the national level. So the Infrastructure and Investment Act of 2021 allocated, I believe, $500 million to federal agencies for wildfire prevention work. And while a lot of that is going to the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, that funding, like CAF has functioned, is also working as pass-through funding and supporting more place-based community organizations, for example, in our state as well. I read last week that some representatives from Washington, Oregon, and California reintroduced a bill called the National Prescribed Fire Act of 2024. And it's pretty ambitious and has a lot of parts about reducing regulation for prescribed fire during burn seasons and allocating funds. And those are some hopeful messages. This map I included here is a spread of where there are prescribed burn associations, which are community-based, kind of like almost tool sharing and experience sharing organizations to bring beneficial fire back to both private and public land. Placer County has an extremely active PBA, which Barrett has some experience with them. And yeah, they're also popping up in other states as well.
And I might
Okay,
just jump
so now
in.
we'll-
I just wanted to
Absolutely,
make a connection is that, for example, with that 2024 National Prescribed Fire Act, that's actually how our policy team also engages at the national level, is that when we see an opportunity to comment, for example, on the Clean Air Act quality regulations, right, that are affecting the ability to do these prescribed burns, we will send in our letters of comment and that sort of thing and work on like different groups that do that so that we can get that message to Congress. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So now we'll kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the webinar. So this is the first time that CAF has offered funding for direct fuel reduction and wildfire prevention projects. And it's been a really amazing experience to see Barrett and Lisa, you know, with from the idea stage to the implementation stage and the learning stage after. And I got to visit both of their farms 3 different times over the winter and spring. And yeah, so I really enjoyed getting to see that development. And I think this is hopefully the first of many projects. We recognize that farmers and ranchers are positioned to very effectively and quickly be able to do work in terms of wildfire resilience practices, whether it's grazing or prescribed fire or fuel reduction, with your intimate knowledge of the land and seasons and equipment as well. It's a valuable opportunity. So I'm excited to hear from you both. And first we will hear from Barrett from Lincoln High School Farm.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
So, hi, my name is Barrett Hess, and I'm one of the 4 full-time teachers here at the Lincoln High School Farm. Lincoln High School Farm is located in Lincoln, California. I'm not sure where everybody's from that's on this right now, but basically we're just north of Sacramento a little ways. It's a pretty interesting place. It's pretty flat. We really don't have a lot of grade to our ground here, so we're subject to drought and flooding in a very special way that California is known for in some other areas too. And so we have the distinction of being the nation's largest high school farm, we believe. We are just over 400 acres here, and then we have another site across the street that's another 500 acres. And previously, we had employed fire as a management tool up until about 2017. That was with a former manager before I took over. And it was not that difficult a process. It was done kind of regularly. And then by 2018, that was not happening anymore. So now we're looking at 6 years of increased fuel load all over this farm. At the same time, we've actually increased the number of students that come to this site. We have well over 300 students that are cycling through the site at all times, practicing agriculture. We raise goats, we have goat herd, meat goat herd. We have beef cattle. We raise hay, forage mixed hay, which is not irrigated. That's just overwintered. And then we have rice. And then we steward about 300 acres of wetland around us. Some of that is federally protected wetlands, vernal pools, and then others is wetlands that we have chosen to put in and steward. And so all of those things offer pretty unique teaching opportunity to students. We like to say if it's running, we're running it. If it's broken, we broke it. And we're probably fixing it right then too. So our successes and failures are all right in front of us. This was a really neat opportunity. We didn't realize that we could get back into fire as a management tool. And so we had made a connection with Brian Pimentel from RCD. And he had recommended that we reach out to the University Extension Office and Cordy Craig. And they were doing some work to do some training to increase the knowledge base and education and preparation for people to become burn bosses and do the kind of work that's happening around this county. We are here kind of at the very western end of Placer County. And we managed to actually walk out and look at a space. And then next thing I know, I got this link over to CAF for this funding opportunity. And that's where we met the folks from CAF, which has been pretty fantastic. So I guess that's a little bit of the background. Do you want to talk about the tract itself? All right, the area of work. So this area that we're looking at right now was formerly a irrigated pasture. We used to run our cows in there. That was like the safe place to run cows when everybody had to be gone for a couple of weeks and you needed some good feed. We have just a irrigation canal there. It's kind of on that northeast side that runs through, and we have alfalfa checkwoods that run the water out across that. So it traverses, right from where that little arrow is, it traverses down the field from there. That area over the last few years has gotten worse and worse, but initially what had happened is with the drought, our ditch levels didn't come up until late May. And by then most of the preferred species had died out of that area. And then it was subject to degradation over the time. And so it has leaked pretty profusely. And now it's completely covered in rush. And rush is a difficult species to work with in a lot of ways because it's not palatable. Animals don't like to eat it, even if you try to force them to do it. And that's just enough acres. It's about 10 acres there, a little bit more as we kind of progress over to the actual roadside there on the southeast side. And by the end of summer, that is a very tall, dry stand of stuff. Oh yeah, and said there's a bunch of that in there too. So it basically fell into disrepair to the point where it was not very grazable anymore. And so we had talked about different ways maybe to go in there and manage that, from chopping it down and then letting the green come up and then try to poison it. And then this opportunity came up to possibly reduce that fuel load and then commit work to it. While we went in, we found out that we actually had more invasive species than we thought growing in that pasture at the same time. And fire is just going to be a really good management tool to take care of that and then allow us to be able to get in there and do some work. And we're going to use that area as a test bed to plant 3 different native grasses that we have on recommendation, which are basically 2 perennial rye and a purple needle grass of some sort. I have the specific setting somewhere. I'm not really great with names, sorry. So anyway, we're going to replant those back there and try to use those as a cattle feed. We're going to see how that goes and monitor those species as we move along. So as we move down both sides of that property, you start getting into the Himalayan blackberry, which it has grown very profusely over the last few years. And interestingly enough, in this project, we've tried to take it out several times, and it's proving itself to be rather resilient. So once we can get that burnout to that side, hopefully we can outcompete it a little bit. And then we've done some fencing and structure work there too, so that we can use grazing as a technique to kind of improve those areas and stay on top of it a little bit easier. All right, so our fire management program basically doesn't exist. So we looked at it from that standpoint of, we're a school, what do we do? Because we have most of the agricultural students from our area going to school here. Fire hasn't been a part of their management tool system for some time either. How do we impact those students in a way that is meaningful and make sure that we have the opportunity to kind of spread the word about how to do this and reduce those barriers, because it seems like a big deal. I mean, you're going to toss a match on there. It seems like you're doing something that could have a lot of impacts, both positive and negative. So like, how do we reduce that barrier? And so one of the first things that we did was reach out for assistance and help. And we've got that in several different ways. I can't say enough for Cordy and Chris through RCD. They've been out several times to walk it with us, assure us that we can do it and direct the work. We have equipment here. Our students operate equipment here too. So that helps. Some of the more precarious areas on our property are actually those ditch lines and whatnot. So we are limited in some of the things that we could do with them. So that's been a bit of a challenge. You can put student hands to work, but you can only do it in certain ways that are safe. And then we got a lot of support from our district when we asked if we could get in there with students and actually commit to this burn project and do the actual burn management with our students. So we started looking at how do you bring that into a classroom to make that real. And so the first really cool big step was Josh actually came in. That was pretty neat. So Josh came in and we went out and we did some field load surveys. Did a transect in that field to see what it looked like, so we could keep some data. So we can keep that data year over year to see what has happened after we have modified that landscape with fire, and then tried to return it back with some of those native plantings, so we can find out what that looks like. And we have many, many, many more acres in the future that we need to do the same thing with. Our vernal pool areas definitely need to get some fire management on them. And you look at fire as this great tool to reduce this field load, and that's fantastic. It's great. But the other things that it can do, if you time it well and you have good advice, are pretty amazing to combat some of the other things that we're dealing with in California here. We have on this farm, we have a canary grass that's growing right now. We have tons of Medusa head, which is a big issue. And the shatter on that's terrible. Just about the second it's ripe, you walk through the field and it's shattering everywhere, all over the place. It looks like a shadow of itself, but then it stands there for such a long period of time. And then we have this rush there at the same time. We also have something that's creeping across California really terribly right now called buffalo burr. I don't know if you're familiar with that. We call it terror berries here. It's basically a spiny poison nightshade that's growing all over the place. And it's starting to take over here too. And so while that particular species isn't in this field, all of the other ones are, along with the Himalayan blackberries and some other things that you're seeing there. So it just becomes a really neat thing to, you reach into this tool bag and you find out you got all these other little tools in there too, by timing that burning and whatnot. So it's really developed a good conversation for us here about restorative grazing techniques. What do you do next to maintain this afterwards? And then how do we address all these other pieces of property that we have? We're bordered on the north and the south parts of our property with these, vernal pool fields. And at some point, we need to address those as well. And so the adaptive management on those properties is going to be, arranging burns for those areas too. So as we train ourselves, we were looking at using CAF funding to supply with the tools and equipment that we need to be able to have our students go out and do these burns. And then afterwards, like, what does a student do, right? So if they're interested in the career, they can move forward either in the prevention end or on the other end in suppression. We have a lot of students that are very interested in both of those things. And what's great about this is by bringing this tool into our district and making this part of our advanced ag science course, this will free us up to be able to offer internships to students to be able to go work with these organizations. So we formerly had students that were working at some of our local firehouses, and because we were not part of the public safety sector, they would not allow us to continue to do that, even though it was a fantastic experience for those kids and most of them went on to that industry. Now it is. That's definitely in our wheelhouse. And I think that is part of the message and the mission that we have here too, is to kind of awaken people's understanding of fire and its use as a management tool, and not necessarily, fire suppression is going in, and like fire control is suppression. Fire control can also be, fuel reduction ahead of time, and being used as a tool for maybe invasive species and other things like that too. And if you can burn it in a time when, the winds are, going the right direction in your favor, and maybe you don't have, so many air quality issues, and you can kind of control when that happens, then it doesn't spring up on you later. And all of those points are really important for students to learn and to be able to get their hands on to do for real. So we bought 30 pairs of fire resistant clothing, in different sizes. We'll probably continue to get those as we go along, and gloves and whatnot. We got hand tools, McLeod's rakes, and some of those knife rakes. And we also were working with a local guy down at in Auburn. His name is Paul Ferreira, and he had several fire skids that were in disrepair. So we brought him over to the mechanics class and started repairing those and getting them ready to go. And he said, "Hey, feel free to use them. We can work out something later." So we've got 2 of those ready, sitting off to the side now, and we're really excited. So we got the kids out. We started, trying to cut down to bare mineral soil for our containment areas and whatnot. And we were scheduled to burn originally the 23rd of May. It started raining.
Oh, that's right.
And everything grew. Our field got really wet, and we thought, well, I guess we're not going to be burning this sucker for a while. So we pushed off, and then it rained again. And then we deferred another time. And we thought, okay, well, we're finally getting there. So our rush was nice and tall. We went out and took a look, got some advice from Cordy and Chris. We set up another piece of equipment that would lay our rush down flat so that it could dry, so that it would be a better fuel for our controlled burn. And our ditch filled back up and flooded the field the 2 days before we were supposed to light that off, which was supposed to be this last Thursday. So we've had a number of setbacks along the way. We have all our equipment sitting at the ready, fueled up, which I'll have to drain out. Thank you, California Fuel, for that. We've got all our water sitting, our tenders ready to go. All of our clothes are set out in the classroom right next to us for the kids. We had to call everybody and say, "Hey, it's not going to happen on Thursday." A lot of the students were still like raring to go. They said, "Hey, if you need any work as we get closer to our actual burn date, let us know. We'll come back in." But some opportunities open there at the same time. It does give us some more time to look at some hose purchases and some fitting purchases, because it got a little more finite. So we were going to borrow those from RCD, and now we will be purchasing those. And in addition, our students will be here during that period of time. And RCD has offered to come in and give a training like Josh did on a Saturday to help walk us through the process with the kids that'll be committing the burn later. Oh, wow. So we're actually really excited about that. And in the end, this will probably end up being a boon for the students, even though it was a challenge. And right now I'm waiting for BCWA to drop the ditch water back down so I can plug that thing off and get in there with a tractor and stop this from happening. So
I had a question, Barrett. Could you
Sure.
elaborate a little bit on the prep for the unit that you had the students involved in? Just like, yeah, I mean, obviously it's great for them to pick up a new tool and learn how to use it and that sort of thing. But
Absolutely.
you mentioned about the smoke management permit process too, and involving them in that side of things, because we all know that schools are considered sensitive areas, right? And so you have to be extra careful because young lungs are more sensitive than the rest of us. And so those are all interesting factors, right? When you're trying to build a program in a place where you have higher vulnerability.
Sure.
So if you could speak to that, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the first thing that kids are vulnerable to is not getting out to do something. So if you can get them out to do something, you won the first piece of that. And they're excited to do it, and they're tough. Kids are a lot tougher than we think they are. RCD had a lot of experience already, which is pretty cool. And they had waivers set up, ready to go and whatnot. So that was like one of the biggest things is getting the assistance from somebody that knows what's going on, to say we can do this, and we're the first school that we know that's really trying this, and to be able to in the future have all the equipment and gear set up ready to go so that we can work with our organizations like CAF and RCD to be able to use this site as a training ground, which actually we did. On the 23rd, they held a training here for the burn program. Being able to offer that is a really big deal. And then having that alliance to help answer those questions when people have them is pretty nice. And so we had support in building that plan, getting the permits. And then in addition, there's an incident plan that you put together for where your nearest trauma centers are and whatnot, what you'll have on hand and all that. And by working with RCD for that, they come prepared with those things. And then I just intend to emulate what they have working, because if it's working, you keep doing it right. So, what's on the RCD truck and purchase those things. And then in addition, one of the things that Western Placer, RN, had wanted to do kind of, I know this isn't a funds match, but in the end, the cost of the project is basically double what we're getting for grants here. One of those things is to send us a way to get some more advanced training in, kind of the emergency remediation type of stuff with kids. Because that, a lot of times, it's not necessarily how much training you need in the incident. It's the comfort level of people knowing that you have the training in case something does happen. And anytime you walk out with kids, like, what do you do to make sure that they're safe? Like, we have a go bag. It goes to the back field with us that has all kinds of trauma stuff in it and whatnot. And what are your contacts and where do you go? And since we do that a lot on this farm anyway, it's, I guess, to some degree expected. The barrier is a little different here because our students are out working in that environment more often.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
No, I appreciate like the, articulating with the investment in a program, right? You're not just treating 11 acres come October, whenever the burn window opens back up again. Like, you've got 300 plus acres, right? That you're,
our target eventually is a little over 300 acres here, but we have another property, 500 acres on the other side of the road there that eventually is going to be probably in the same shape. It's been grazed a bit more intensely and managed a little bit differently over the years. And it came into being as one of those mitigation repositories later. And so because of the limitations on that property here and having it existed longer, our rangeland succession has dropped further because we haven't committed the actions that we needed. And even our biologic monitors have been recommending for years that, like, you need to burn this. We don't know how to make it happen. You need to burn this. We don't know how to make it happen. We can't get through carb. We don't know what to do. And now here we are in 2024. And the last thing I would have guessed is that CAF and RCD would have found a way to make that happen for us, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and that speaks to the importance of the partnerships, but also, knowing who's who in your community that's already done it, right? So that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you can tap those other relationships and processes to streamline the efforts. So awesome.
And then we also, to answer the other part of that question, having the students out to help us get the property ready. So we have students in an advanced mechanics class, and I have interns here too. So they're operating equipment fairly regularly. So we just have to watch the off-angle stuff to make sure that they're not operating equipment in the canals, essentially. The other pieces are flat. So we have, pretty simple but safe, important safeguards here. Like, we don't operate next to each other. We always have line of sight, and anytime you stop the piece of equipment, you drop all the gear, turn everything off before you dismount and everything. So everything's, we call it drop dead, drop everything down, kill the tractor. And we managed to get through, the entire chopping of that field and everything successfully. And then now, I guess one of the new unforeseen challenges is things are still growing. So those containment lines are not, they're not finished because it got wet again, right? So in the back, the wetlands, which borders that kind of southwest side down there, I mean, it's still growing. It's a wetlands, right? So we're going to be in and out of there through the duration of the summer, trying to keep up with it and make sure that it doesn't flood again, that we're prepared. And then we really need to encourage that next stand to grow up and then cut it and dry it so that we're prepared to actually get an appropriate burn to get rid of the invasive species that are in there now in October.
Yeah, and maybe Josh, you want to jump in on this too. One of the things we talked about with, prescribed burning, especially in California, is this sort of elephant in the room of this artificial cutoff date for when they allow a burn to happen, which any indigenous practitioner can tell you is it depends, right? Like when the appropriate timing is because of what you're trying to manage. So
today was the cutoff, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when people are on a schedule to spray for insects. It's like, but did you monitor? Do you need to spray? Or are you just on a system, right? And does the system actually support what you're trying to achieve? So we know that that's its own challenge within the space. And so again, why our policy group, we also work with CalCan to talk, to legislators about different ways to address these types of barriers. So We appreciate that you're the guinea pig and we just get to support you.
Well, we haven't made it all the way through a process yet, so I'm excited to get there.
Right.
But I think in schools, everything happens pretty slowly. This actually happened more quickly than I kind of would have imagined. And I got to give a big shout out to my administration for like trusting us and wanting to go along and make sure this works. And Western Placer has several land holdings that in the end will probably benefit from this too. And especially with, student crews to be able to go out and do that and be able to invite community members to come in and use this as a training site, not just for our students, but our entire community is a really neat opportunity. And then having all that gear right there, it's like, it's right there. You guys need to do it. You can come use this place. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is really exciting.
Yeah.
I appreciate those in-depth responses. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Barrett. Lisa, would you like to go ahead now and talk a little bit about you and Steve's farm in Penryn and the project? Awesome.
Well, we are, my husband and I operate and own Pilt's Produce at Hillcrest. And Hillcrest is the family farm name that his grandfathers had since 1927. We grow citrus, tomatoes, winter squash. I'm trying to think of it. And I do cut flowers and an assortment of other summer produce. Oh, and melons. Those are our main crops. I've been at the farm since 2002. Steve joined his grandfather in the early 1980s and took over as his grandfather got older. And so he's been farming for, what is that, 44 years or so there. And I come from a ag background also. I went to Chico State and my major was ag, and I was going to be a teacher. And then I happen to be of the era that they cut all vocational programs in California, so I didn't continue on. So it's kind of funny that here I am at a school farm because I was going to be an ag teacher. But
you come visit anytime.
Yeah. And our farm's in Penryn, California. So we're just east of here, about a half an hour from the farm here in Lincoln. And just that half hour, we're on substantial hills, as Josh well knows after he came to the place. And so I'm trying to see that we're on a little tablet. I'm pulling it a little closer so I can see. So that
I can clarify if you need. The red outline is the area that you had treated, and then the yellow is an approximation of your property, and then that's Clark Tunnel Road at the top.
Is at the top. Yep. Okay, I get it. And so our houses are all up there at the top, where Josh, they're right to your. Let's see, I would say the right-hand side of the red is our farm homes. And that is my husband and my house. And then about 100 feet away is my daughter, her husband, and my grandchildren's house. And then where the red is, it drops off substantially. I don't know what, Josh, would you say the grade is what, about a 45? Because it's pretty steep in there. And
in terms of percent, definitely 30 to 40% slope.
Yep. And so that's within 27 feet of our houses. And what began our thought, well, I don't quite remember which organization forwarded your program to me. And I believe it was either the RCD from Brian or it was one of the other ag offices up in Auburn that forwarded this on to me. And so I thought, well, I might as well apply because that hillside is getting really, really overgrown. And that stems from, the answer to the survey you put up there is we were impacted by fire. And it just happened to be the day after we got home from the Placer County Fair.
Oh my gosh.
We came home and somebody had lit fireworks up in the train tracks, which are right above our house. And they threw them on the side of the road. And that fire started and burned 4 acres of our place and went up the hill toward neighbors' homes. So we were directly impacted by fire in that same spot that was now overgrown. So I applied for the grant because it's a spot that's really hard to get to because of the steepness of it. And so with some health issues on the farm too, with my husband, we weren't able to take care of that like we would have liked to do ourselves. And we at the time didn't even realize it could have a team of people come in to masticate. We had no idea that was even possible with the steepness. And after getting at first, I thought we would be doing a cut and then a burn. And after talking with Amber and Josh, we realized, well, we might as well have people, a couple different, I believe we had 3 teams of people that do the masticating and tree work come in and give us estimates. And because it was a combination of blackberries, live oaks that became all brushy because they then grew as basic shrubs from the past fire, and all kinds of other. There was digger pines in there, which I think are those gray pine. We had valley oak, which the people were very good about saving the valley oaks that were in there, as they call it. And when there's willows are the other thing. That's what I'm missing there. And so the 2 trees, those 2 tall trees right there are our homes right up there at the top. That's where the houses are. And I think this picture is looking from Clark Tunnel back, isn't it, Josh? I'm trying to tell.
Yeah, on the other side of the pond, like level with the house, but across.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so that drops down about probably 75 feet and then goes back up again. It's hard to tell in the picture how steep that really is. But we had these guys come in, and we have a little dirt road that kind of goes through that section. And the one we went with had a piece of equipment that was basically a skid steer with an arm and the grinding head that could reach over and down that hill. And what he couldn't reach, the other team members would cut and get closer to him so that they could masticate it. And they masticated and left the debris in place as hillside mulch because of the possible erosion issues. And we do have a pond at the very bottom of this mess. And now we can actually see our the pond from our homes, which is kind of a relief actually to have that. There it is right there. That's our angle.
Do that after that was, so the picture was taken on February 9th. What did the work start?
And they did the work May 12th.
Okay.
A couple days. It took them a couple days.
The ground,
yeah. And so we had the that hailstorm right before he started. And actually, being as this is all DG and easily drains, he had no problem getting in there.
Great.
Yeah. And so this road right here that you see, this cut, is the lower road. And up here at the higher spot is another little road. And it comes in as switchbacks back down here. And their pond is on your very right-hand side that you can't see in the picture. And so it was about an 1.5 acre, 2 acre spot, Josh, that we did. And to me, it doesn't even look that big because you look straight down, but it was a huge amount of work they did that we could have never done in an entire year. Could we have gotten that done and done our farm work at the same time?
Sure.
And our goal is to, we have been purchasing goats to put in there. And at this time we have 4, but we've determined that we also need a couple of the sheep because the goats are only eating the blackberries and the live oak type things, but the sheep need to get after the grasses that get tall because this is so close to the road that a lot of people drive on. Well, not a lot, but enough that don't do good. We don't want to have another incident with fireworks. And, and this was, when this came up, all I was thinking about is that's my grandchildren's home that is so close to where this could happen. And it was a very emotional thing for me after the fire we already went through, because we darn near lost both homes in that fire, all to somebody's either, they believe it was arson, but or carelessness, but they had several fires start that same day. And so they think it was arson, but brought on by fireworks. And so to me, that was really, really scary. And it was, I want to say, my daughter's 31 now, and she was in high school showing. So that had to be 15 years ago. And it's still so fresh in my mind of when that happened and how many fire personnel came and aircraft. And we had all of them. We had planes and helicopters all to save our little area because of, we're only a mile from that town center of Penryn itself. And so it was very scary at time. But now, as Josh saw kind of when he was there, we've got the goats. We've got them in a different area working right now because this hadn't grown enough to put them in yet. But the goats will come over to this side, keep it clear so it doesn't ever get that bad again. And also having this clear, like it is, we can actually get the goat fence in. The way it was before, I don't think we could have gotten the fence into there too, because we're putting the goats in with the electric fencing. And so we've used the funding to get some of the electric fence for the goats, and we paid for part of the mastication ourselves, and then the grant paid for part of that, because we just had them do as much as they could do. And they got over to a spot that was cleared a couple of years ago. And so now it's very open until you get, to the citrus part. So we don't have this big wildland buffer on the farm. So it's safer for our neighbors and everybody around us too, because of the access where it isn't really visible to all the neighbors. And if anybody's doing bad stuff like throwing fireworks, nobody could see them because it's of the layout of the road. And so for us, this was just kind of a dream come true to be able to have this happen this year, because it was the furthest thing from my mind was to ever get that parcel fixed. And so we're very thankful for this program that you guys helped facilitate, and all the help with Josh coming out and seeing the thing and going, oh my God. I was really didn't think it was something that a masticating team could do. I really had my extreme doubts. And when they came, and all three of the people we had come were equally able. They had different methods they would have done the project. And some were a little, like one was going to take 2 weeks, but it was all hand crews. And we went with the person who could do it fastest. And it all of them cost approximately the same amount of money. It was just different manners of the way they would have done the work, which was very interesting.
Well, and it's so important that we have these two very different projects, because topography alone, right? We know that fire wants to run uphill, and your buildings are all clustered at the top of this hill. And so sometimes fire as a management tool isn't appropriate because maybe there's a trauma and you're not comfortable with having fire that close to your areas, but also it's just not as feasible in this spot, right? And so even though I think a mechanical methods sometimes get like a bad rap in like the fire management space, because it's not stable carbon that you're creating and all those things. It's still a really important tool, and it's one of many of the toolbox, right? So you're following with grazers. That's really important to help manage it afterwards. And presumably if you decide and you get comfortable, you can invite Barrett and the students to come do a little baby burn when you're ready.
I mean, we have 34 acres there. So there, and now it's more able to be done. And we left as you can see, there are trees left. Those are left on purpose for shade for the goats. And we left them, the person who came was that's their job. They do masticating for fire safety. And whoops, stop that alarm there. Sorry about that. They, when I explained we wanted shade breaks, and he even knew exactly what we were talking about and for the animals and the purpose that they were needed. And so none of those trees, even though they kind of look like it, none of those trees touch each other at the tops. And they were very good at actually some of the trees that were there that were left, they trimmed up. And that was not even in part of the description of what he was going to do, but they did it anyway, knowing that we were working on getting that ladder fuel out of the way also.
I think it's interesting, like you noted how fire touches families, and like it touched yours on this property. And if that gets out of control, like the people that show up to save your house are invested in trying to keep a family farm and like this legacy structure alive for you, right? And they're putting themselves in harm's way to do it. Out on our property, I think we're almost more taking kids into the opportunity to say, I'm really interested in this. They might be the people that are there one day.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's kind of neat how
to save livelihoods and lives.
Yeah, exactly. And firefighters, I mean, they're providing a livelihood for their family at the same time. So it's so deeply connected in so many different ways, from all the way from using it as a management tool to the suppression end, and to the families that are touched. I think this was kind of an eye opener for me on that.
The funny part is that I forgot to mention, and Amber and Josh know, but Steve was a volunteer firefighter for many years. He was the assistant chief of volunteers at Penryn Fire. And so he did a lot of training of these young fire people because that was his job as assistant. And this was all pre 9/11 when and then after that they required much more in-depth training that was always during our mandarin season, so he wasn't able to keep up. So he retired from that and then got on the board, and then he's since retired from the board of the fire department also. But it's like his second job was firefighting after farming.
But don't
so
worry, Lisa didn't tell us that on her application. That was bonus
no,
afterwards.
That's right. I told him when he got there, I was like, oh, and by the way, it just is so interesting that, that when we did have that fire, we had gotten home from the fair. He was in shorts and sandals, and I don't even remember what. We were exhausted. And he's out there in his shorts and in t-shirts fighting and with sandals on, fighting this fire. That's because all the embers were falling in our backyard. And so he was out there with his fire buckets doing what he would do on a line. And so it was interesting to watch him in action trying to do that. And I'm gathering the papers and the animals because this is all before the heavy wildfire in our areas that usually the fires were all, up in the forest and not nearly as close as this one was. So we didn't really know about go bags and all the things you need to have in order to go. We were scrambling. And so a lot of that too, in the preparedness for leaving, I was trying to do that while he was trying to help save our home.
Yeah.
And with and we had the pink retardant was dropped on our home and our cars and all that. And so we've seen that whole scenario on our farm. And, you look at what they had done here, and it hasn't got anything to do with our actual growing ground, but it surrounds our growing ground. Sure. And so, if it got from here, it would then get into our orchards, which are to the south of, which are directly, if you look straight through this, the orchards are beyond that. And then our annual growing grounds are below that. And then it's the town of Penryn down below, which, could easily burn through the trees.
Sure.
And get, it depending on the wind directions.
Well, now you're solving this problem, sustaining it with another agricultural product.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it is because, forestry is all part of agriculture too. Sure. And, you look at the whole of all of it, and keeping it maintained is what is most important now. And that would be our goats. And, and now we're going to have to find some darn sheep, which we weren't planning on getting. But now in watching what the goats have done, we've learned that we have to have a few sheep too. And so that was just kind of a learning, and talking to a few fellow people at the farmers market who actually raise sheep. They're like, yeah, you need that for this type of material. Yeah. And that I didn't think about the grass portion of the problem.
We're having that same discussion right now.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Very similar one.
Now I just have to figure out where to get
There's so much continuity between all these different practices. And that's the idea, is to get folks just exposed to what the options are and see what's most appropriate for their,
right.
And so that reminded me, and I just put it in the chat just in case and for the history of the chat, but there's a Farming Through Wildfire Season program that was created by Farmer Campus. They're an online learning platform. I think Barrett should make it part of his curriculum. But anyway, that's really cool. It's free. And then also we do have a blog addressing what you just mentioned, which was the wildfire retardant impacts on, different operations, because there's a lot of synthetic fertilizers in there. So if you're an organic certified farmer, that's a big problem. So
we were lucky the drop was only on our houses and cars and wasn't anywhere near the farm.
Yeah.
Even though we're not certified, we don't put anything synthetic. So that's why we were like, at the time, we weren't even concerned. We just wanted our place saved. And that would have been number one priority, not over what is going on the ground. But we were lucky that they didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to get off my soapbox. I'm going to add a few more fun links in the chat. But Layla, do you have any questions as our other participants had fallen off? I'm curious to hear your thoughts and questions.
Hi, can you see me and hear me now?
Yay. Oh, there we are.
Sure can.
Welcome.
No, I just mostly wanted to listen and see what was going on over there with Amber and Josh's program and see what you guys are up to. Yeah, you're in a different landscape than me, so it's just interesting to see what people are up to.
This whole thing has got me really interested in a bunch of regenerative grazing stuff. It's like one thing just goes to the next. I found this regenerative grazing podcast, and so I've been like starting to listen to this. And the thing, and you mentioned something that it just rings true, is nobody's terrain is the same. There's similarities and there's things to look for and things to understand. Like when Josh came out and did Transex with us, and we were looking at the fuel loads in there. He's like, hey, this is pretty simple. There's like no trees in the middle of this right now. So, you know, like these fuel loads are going to burn for very short periods of time by comparison, right? And it's neat that you can apply these tools in all these different places, but nobody's place is the same. And
yeah,
That's
just
so
hearing
true.
other people's, you know, stories of what they're putting into it has just been super fun, from the grazing end to the fire end. And it's neat that there's at least some organizations out there that are ready to connect us together, because otherwise,
Exactly.
I don't know
Yeah.
what my next step was. Really, poison probably was my next step,
And that's not what we want to
I'm
do.
not after
You know,
that,
it's like
that's really hard to do in a school.
Exactly. You've
Yeah.
got kids here, and that's really cool that
yeah,
there are these tools. Well, ours is, you know, on our farm, we do burn piles, but it's like a regular basis of what we do, and we only do them in the winter. We never burn ourselves. For mostly my sanity is we don't usually burn after April, honestly, because it's so up and down and with our terrain the way it is. And we, especially for our area, watch the wind. That's most important for us. But I didn't put the burn piles into our portion of the grant because we regularly do it anyway. And so, and it's because we prune the citrus, you know, every year we have some sort of prunings to burn.
Well,
Yeah, I
that
don't think it
also
would've-
proves why we want to give farmers money, is because you guys are already doing the work. Sometimes you already have the skill sets and the equipment.
Yeah.
You tend to be located in the buffer of the WUI, which is like double bang for your buck to protect larger urban areas or infrastructure. And
Right.
so that was kind of the whole point of the project in some ways, is like illustrate that putting money in the right places can give you a bigger benefit in the long term, not just our, you know, acres treated, you know, metric that is like the state's, I don't know, obsession. But what about the ecological benefits, right? And all the other pieces that we're talking about. So,
well, what about the acres that wouldn't be treated? That's the biggest deal. Is like you get it, you can treat a ton of other things, but if you can't empower smaller operations to be able to do it themselves, you're not going to get those. And what's going to eventually happen is you're going to get driven up insurance costs, and you're going to have difficulties. You're going to lose something. And
it's happening.
Yeah, well, we know that a lot of folks are doing work and it's not getting captured, so they're not getting credit that these ag spaces are doing the work, right? Whether it's burning or grazing or whatever. And so also, Barrett, I shamelessly put our most recent podcast with Beth Reynolds in the chat there.
Cool, because I'm a podcast junkie.
Oh, I love it.
So
I have to learn about this because our neighbors have barking dogs. I need to get earbuds.
Oh, it's great. I come out here in the morning and work and I put them in.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was going to say too, you know, the way the mastication did the chipping of the debris, which then created a erosion control for us, because, you know, the county always talks about their chipping program, right? Here in Placer County, they have this chipping program, except only homeowners can do it. And I'm like, but we are a homeowner. Oh, no, you're a business. We had that same thing happen. We were trying to get solar for our home. Oh, but you're a business. You can't get a residential loan. Well, this is my house, though. I don't operate my business here. It's out on this land. And so having this program, too, we were able to chip a bunch of stuff that was really helpful to our soil.
Yeah. Exactly. Some water retention and all that. Yeah. And you did have a pretty decent rain, right?
Yes.
But,
yes. It was
so talk about climate instability and a shifting landscape of when these treatment types are appropriate. Yeah.
Yep. That's for sure.
Well, so awesome. Any like closing thoughts or questions? The recording will be, you know, up on our Catholics YouTube page eventually, maybe a couple days here. So we can always share that link and you can show your friends how famous you are.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
once
you're-
again, thank you both so much for coming and agreeing to, tell us, give a recap and everything. It was really great to kind of see it all at once.
It's kind of fun to talk through it too, of what we really did and hear what you did, because
so we're still trying to
was
do.
so different than what we're trying to do. Exactly.
That's another follow-up assignment for your students, huh, Barrett? They can write a blog at the post-burn.
So, it's interesting. I don't know about writing blogs yet, but actually I have on my assignment list for next year, we're going to all pick a different blog to reference and then do like a 1-pager on each one of those things that we have all, but it has to be related to some of the work that we're doing here on the farm.
Oh, wow.
Or something that's of an occupational interest agriculturally to the student. So I think that's going to be pretty, that's pretty cool. It's just a great way to learn and share things.
Yeah.
And like while your hands are free to do something else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have to be sitting there doing, whatever, and sharing that information or knowledge back and forth. There's always something, even if it's just describing something that you've been dealing with a term, you're like, oh, that's what it's called. Next thing you know, you're looking something up and you're learning something else.
Yeah.
It's a cascade of information.
It really is. My daughter, who's, hopefully going to take over the farm, she's always on either YouTube to learn something or podcast. And she's like, Mom, have you seen this? And I'm like, no, because I'm old fashioned and I don't remember to look in places. But I mean, she fixes our equipment more than any of the men, because Steve with Parkinson's, he shakes so bad. So she's learning how to change air filters in the equipment. And she texts me, Mom, you need to order more air filters. And so it's interesting, the change, but she figured out how to change it by going on YouTube instead of asking my husband how to do it. Yeah.
YouTube University.
Yep.
Cool. Well, we hope, as Layla knows, CAF really likes to do in-person events as much as possible to bring, the community together to share stories, practices, etc. So hopefully, Barrett, when you're ready, we'll be ready to cross-post.
I know a farmer would love to host something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool.
Maybe quite often. That's what it's all about.
Good. I love it. Well, we're excited to see what comes next. And always inspiring to work with farmers who are doing good work.
Another couple of years, we'll have a little exhibition center here right outside the classroom. So you could do like an outdoor discussion or laboratory.
Oh, that would be
we're improving passive travel around the farm without adding passive travel. We're just trying to kind of improve moving around so that we can access some of our areas a little bit better, and then working on getting rid of a lot of the invasives in the back and some remediation and stuff like that. So there's probably a lot of opportunity there as we go forward too. So
absolutely,
feel free anytime. Or if you know somebody and you're like, I think you ought to head out to that farm. They might be able to help you out. Please do.
Yeah, and shameless plug for the ecological farming program at CAF too. We love to connect people to resources. So look us up if you need anything.
I get that list on the chat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything's recorded, including the chat. So, and Layla, if you want, do you want to pop in the EF team website?
I can find it real quick. Hold on.
Well, if not, anyway, we can always send that to y'all like via email or whatnot. But we try to keep all of our links and stuff like that, just as a follow-up to participants, including like the recording as well. So
fantastic.
Yay.
I was trying to email them to myself as you were going along here. Now I see that I should probably talk to your tech hub advisor, because I think I wasted a bunch of time.
Yes, I was just going to say that was my other shameless plug, is that we often find that, different entry points for different types of programs are actually a great segue to like people realizing that CAF has so much more to offer with these different types of teams. And so like Layla's team, Barrett, if you guys want to do a healthy soils grant or whatever, like, they can connect you with the folks and get you set up with all those types of things. So we basically, we do it all. I want to say we do it all except legal stuff. I don't think we have any legal advisors, but
I won't say anything if you don't.
Yeah.
Standard legal.
Stay out of it.
But we know the right people. So awesome. Thanks for sharing the link there. Yeah. So okay. Well, appreciate y'all coming out on an evening and participating and sharing your vision and your lessons learned and all the goods and the future stuff too. So
I'll keep sending updates.
Thanks so much.
All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.